When a woman begins to sense that your attention is no longer on her, the very first shift you're likely to notice isn't dramatic or obvious. It's subtle, almost imperceptible if you're not paying attention. But it's there, and it starts in the face. The face is a remarkable instrument, far more honest than words, because it reveals what someone feels before they've had the chance to filter or suppress it. When you begin to pull back, to ignore her, there's often a flash, a micro-expression, that cuts through her composure. It might be a slight narrowing of the eyes, a sudden arch in the brow, or a momentary tightening of the lips. These micro-expressions happen within fractions of a second, and they speak volumes. Now, she might not say anything at first. In fact, she probably won't. Most women, especially those attuned to social dynamics, are highly skilled at maintaining emotional balance, at least on the surface. But her unconscious mind registers the change. There's a subtle recalibration happening inside her. She's trying to make sense of the shift. And what's most fascinating is that this confusion, this quiet disorientation, often isn't rooted in hurt feelings, not yet. It's rooted in uncertainty. She's asking herself a question, asterisk why, asterisk that question fuels the micro-expressions. You'll see her pause for a split second longer than usual when she looks at you. You'll catch her looking away as if to gather her thoughts, then flicking her gaze back to you just as quickly. It's not an accusation, it's assessment. She's trying to map your behavior against what she knows of you, against what she thought she understood. And if she's invested emotionally, even a little, the disruption of attention throws her balance off, not dramatically, but enough for the body to react. The key here is that the body reacts before the narrative sets in. Before she decides asterisk, why asterisk you're ignoring her, her body already asterisk knows asterisk something is off. And in that moment, her emotional system, built over millennia of evolutionary necessity, is scanning for cues. Is this a threat? Is this disinterest? Is this a power shift? These aren't conscious thoughts. They're primal, and because they're primal, they show up in the most human of ways. Through that flicker in the eye, that millisecond pause in her movement, that slight shift in how she carries her face. And you might think, well, maybe she just didn't notice. But trust me, she did. Women are attuned to relational cues with incredible precision. They're raised, socialized, really, to monitor emotional currents in conversations, to track tone, timing, eye contact. And so when you start ignoring her, when your attention drops out of the room, even if your behavior is mild, she feels it like a change in the air, and her face, before she even says a word, starts giving that away. Now, it doesn't mean she's angry or plotting revenge or crafting some manipulative comeback. That's not what this is about. It's deeper. It's a moment of recalibration in real time, and if you understand that, you'll begin to see that how a woman reacts when you ignore her isn't about theatrics. It's about instinct. The very first reaction isn't an argument or a confrontation. It's that subtle question that flashes across her face when she suddenly realizes something has changed. Once that initial wave of confusion sets in, once she's processed, even subconsciously, that something's different, the next phase of her reaction starts to take shape. It's quiet. You won't see her chasing or confronting right away. In fact, the shift is more observational than expressive. She starts watching, not always obviously. Often, it's in those seemingly accidental moments. The glance across the room, the quick look when you're not supposed to notice, the way she checks your body language, trying to piece together the story you're not telling with words. This isn't manipulation, it's information gathering. See, when someone important to you pulls away, even just slightly, you don't immediately panic. Instead, you monitor. You start checking in, often non-verbally, and usually without even realizing you're doing it. For women, this is particularly refined. Evolutionarily speaking, being tuned into subtle social shifts was crucial, not just for survival, but for maintaining harmony and relational stability. So when you start ignoring her, her perceptual radar activates. And it's sharp. She may begin to look at you more than usual, but these aren't the same looks as before. These are investigative. They're not about affection or admiration anymore. They're about asterisk reading asterisk. She's trying to decode the distance. You'll feel her eyes on you when you're not looking, and you might catch her gaze just as it darts away. These moments aren't confrontational. They're curious. She's scanning for clues, looking for any consistency or inconsistency in your demeanor. Are you distracted? Are you cold? Are you doing this on purpose, or is it something else entirely? And what's fascinating here is that this visual checking doesn't always stop with physical presence. In the modern age, it extends into the digital world. She might start appearing more active on social media, not to flaunt or retaliate, but to see if you'll notice, if you're watching, if your attention is still accessible. There's this dance happening, subtle, often wordless, where both people are gauging each other's responses without direct confrontation. It's tension without declaration, and again, none of this is overt. If you ask her, she might even deny that anything's changed, but underneath, the dynamic is shifting. You can almost sense that she's more aware of your presence than before, more alert to the space you occupy and the energy you bring. That's the paradox when you start ignoring her in many cases. Her attention to you increases. Because for her, what was once predictable is now uncertain, and uncertainty demands resolution. There's something deeply human about this. When someone pulls away, we don't just let go. We study. We try to understand, because understanding gives us a sense of control in a space that suddenly feels unpredictable. And women, particularly, often carry the relational burden of understanding. They're conditioned to smooth over rifts, to decipher emotional undercurrents, to maintain the connection. So when that connection falters, even subtly it triggers this pattern of increased attentiveness. Now, does this mean she's desperate? No, that's the wrong way to read it. What it means is that she's engaging with the ambiguity. She's trying to fill in the blanks with data she gathers not by questioning directly, but by watching how you behave when you think no one is watching. And in those small moments, in those quick glances, she's building a picture of your intentions. Now, as that tension starts to build, and as her awareness of your changed behavior grows clearer, something else starts to happen, something physical, but deeply rooted in emotion. Her body begins to shift, and you might miss it if you're only looking for words, for big reactions. But the body doesn't lie. It's the most primal communication tool we have, and it often speaks before we've made sense of what we're feeling. When you begin to ignore her, what often follows is a quiet reorientation in space, changes in posture, positioning, and even proximity. It's her body reacting to the discomfort of uncertainty, to the absence of a signal that once provided a sense of emotional equilibrium. You might notice she's sitting just a bit differently. Maybe her legs are crossed in your direction when they weren't before, or perhaps her shoulders lean in slightly when you're nearby. These movements aren't always intentional. They emerge from the instinct to reconnect, to re-anchor herself in the dynamic that suddenly feels unsteady. She might stand closer when you walk past, or linger in a space she knows you'll be in. None of it is aggressive or obvious. It's subtle, but it speaks. It says, I noticed, I felt that shift, and now I'm adjusting. But of course, the reaction isn't always leaning in. Sometimes it goes the other way. She might withdraw. Instead of placing herself near you, she positions herself away from you. Her arms cross. Her legs shift away. Her chin tilts slightly upward, not as a sign of arrogance, but as a form of self-protection. It's her way of managing the discomfort of establishing boundaries where connection once stood. That's important to understand. Leaning in and pulling back are both reactions to the same thing. They're strategies for regaining balance. And which one you see depends on her personality, her experience, and how safe she feels expressing herself in that moment. Because what we're really talking about here isn't about strategy or manipulation. It's about orientation. People orient themselves around those they care about. When attention is mutual, it creates a sense of gravity, a sort of emotional center of gravity that makes us feel stable. When you remove your attention, when you begin to ignore her, you disrupt that balance. And the body, being the vessel of emotion, responds before the mind can rationalize it. You'll notice these reactions most clearly in how she carries herself when you're present. Does she stiffen slightly? Does she suddenly appear more alert, more upright? Is she placing herself within your line of sight more often? These are not accidents. They're expressions of the internal recalibration taking place. The body is saying, this doesn't feel the same anymore, and it's adjusting posture and space to compensate. It's reaching or retreating, depending on how vulnerable she feels in that silence you've created. And you have to consider how deeply this plays into the psychology of connection. Physical presence, eye contact, shared space. These are the building blocks of relational trust. So when that presence is disrupted, the body doesn't just stay still. It either moves closer to investigate or pulls away to shield. Both responses are attempts to deal with the emotional ambiguity that your distance has created. This is where you begin to understand that body language isn't decoration. It's not some peripheral detail, it's the message. It's the raw, unfiltered response to a dynamic that words are often too slow to express. And if you're paying attention, really paying attention, you'll see that her body will often tell you exactly how she feels about being ignored, long before her voice ever does. Now, as things continue to shift, after the initial confusion, after the subtle monitoring, after the recalibration of space, something else begins to surface. It's not loud and it's not confrontational, but it's deliberate. It shows up in how she presents herself. Her self-awareness heightens, and with it comes a noticeable increase in self-presentation. This isn't vanity. It's not a game. It's a deeply ingrained behavioral response rooted in psychology, biology, and social conditioning, all converging into the quiet expression of asterisk, I still have value, I'm still here. Asterisk, when you start to withdraw your attention, she begins to wonder why. And in that wondering, there's a flicker of doubt, not necessarily in you, but in herself. That doubt doesn't always take the form of sadness or confrontation. More often, it manifests in subtle grooming behaviors. Maybe she starts adjusting her hair more frequently when you're nearby. Maybe she applies a little more effort to how she dresses, especially in spaces where you might notice. Maybe she touches her face, straightens her back, or glances into reflective surfaces just a little more often. These aren't conscious performances, they're instinctive corrections, micro, adjustments meant to reestablish a sense of control and appeal. What's critical to understand is that these behaviors aren't just about attracting you back. They're about stabilizing herself in a situation where the emotional rules suddenly changed, because when attention is withdrawn, especially in a dynamic where some connection previously existed, it introduces a void. And in that void, a sense of vulnerability can emerge. The natural response, especially for someone who's invested, is to restore a feeling of worth. And how do humans do that? By trying to look composed. Collected, beautiful, even, that's not superficial. It's adaptive. It's a form of nonverbal reassertion of identity. You might see it as her dressing up more, laughing a little louder, walking with slightly more confidence, or even appearing to glow with a new kind of energy. But beneath all of that is a very simple truth. She felt the shift, and this enhancement of self is her way of responding, not with anger, not with pleading, but with presence. She's saying, in essence, I'm still relevant, I still deserve to be seen, and there's a certain elegance to that. It's not about chasing, it's not even about you entirely, it's about recalibrating the emotional field. She's not falling apart, she's adapting, she's reminding herself, and maybe reminding you, of the qualities that existed before the silence. Before the distance, and sometimes that expression of confidence and refinement is more powerful than any direct question or plea for attention. But don't mistake it for indifference. That's the trap. You see her showing up a little sharper, a little more polished, and you think, asterisk, maybe she didn't care in the first place. Asterisk, that's wrong. She did care. That's exactly why she's doing it, because caring and composure can, and often do, exist side by side. She's not reacting to provoke. She's reacting to preserve something, her dignity, her balance, her sense of self-worth, and that, in many cases, is a far stronger statement than anything she could have said out loud. Now, once she's adjusted her posture, once she's begun to present herself with a little more intentionality, more polish, more precision, another layer of her reaction begins to emerge. It's in her voice. It's in her energy. It's in the rhythm of her presence when she speaks or laughs or simply enters a room. And again, this isn't about some grand emotional outburst. It's not a breakdown or a confession. It's much subtler, much more telling. Because when a woman feels the effects of being ignored, her tone often shifts before her words do. The voice is an incredibly powerful signal. It's a carrier of emotional undercurrent, stress, excitement, doubt, hope, all of it encoded in pitch, cadence, and volume. When someone pulls away from us, we instinctively try to feel them out, to test for engagement. And we often do that by adjusting how we communicate. So what happens here, in this stage of the reaction, is a quiet probing. Her voice may become lighter, more playful, almost like she's feeling for your reaction, trying to find the thread of connection again. Or it might get slightly sharper, a bit more direct, even teasing at times, not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity, out of the need to see, asterisk, are you still paying attention? Asterisk, you'll hear it when she laughs a little louder in a conversation you're barely a part of. You'll sense it when she speaks in a tone that carries just a hint of challenge. Something between I don't need you and I dare you to notice me. And this isn't manipulation, it's human. It's the mind and body working together to adapt to ambiguity. She's adjusting her output to see if it still lands, if it still matters. You might think she's just being extra, or maybe it seems like she's showing off, but the truth is, these shifts are often unconscious. She's not performing, she's calibrating. She's reacting to the silence, to the absence, and trying to inject energy back into the space where your attention used to be. That's what we all do in some way when we feel disconnected. We amplify, we reach a little more, we signal through tone and timing and volume in the hope that something clicks back into place. And there's another side to this as well. Sometimes, instead of getting louder, she becomes quieter. But not in a passive way. It's a withdrawal with intent. The laughter softens, the casual comments stop, the warmth in her tone cools. That's not indifference. It's emotional recalculation. She's measuring how much of herself she's willing to invest when she's not sure what, if anything, is coming back. And all of this, every tonal shift, every subtle increase or decrease in energy, it's her way of seeking clarity in a situation that's become uncertain. Because when you begin to ignore someone, even just slightly, it scrambles the implicit understanding that existed between you. The dynamics change, and so she changes too, not because she's playing games, but because she's trying to make sense of something that no one's talking about. So the next time you hear her laugh louder, speak quicker, or say something that carries a bit of edge, listen closely, not just to the words, but to what's underneath them. Because very often her voice becomes the first place you'll hear what she's not quite ready to say. Eventually, after the glances, the subtle shifts in posture, the grooming, the changes in tone, after all of that, she reaches a point where something clicks, and it's important to understand this moment because it's not loud. It doesn't come with anger or confrontation. It's quieter than that, but far more permanent. She lets go. This isn't the same as giving up. It's a deeper, more internal decision, one that happens when a person recognizes the weight of one-sided investment. When she realizes that her body has been speaking, her energy has been reaching, her tone has been adjusting, and yet the silence remains. That's when the resignation settles in. Not a dramatic storm, not tears and chaos. Just a gentle but firm closing of a door that you may not even see right away. You notice it in how she stops checking. The glances are gone. She's not observing anymore, she's not decoding. She's no longer watching you from the corners of her eyes. There's no longer any pull in her posture. She's not leaning in, not placing herself near you, not subtly inviting attention. And what's perhaps most striking is that her presentation, her grooming, her voice, her overall energy, doesn't necessarily fade. In fact, she might look better than ever, but it's different now. It's no longer aimed at reconnecting. It's aimed at moving forward. It's no longer about being noticed by you asterisk. It's about recentering herself without needing your gaze to validate it. And her voice, the one that shifted to seek a reaction or re-engage your attention, it steadies, it becomes neutral, calm, measured. There's no more tension in it, no testing, no hesitation, because she's no longer trying to fix the distance. You've shown her what that distance is. And she's accepted it, not necessarily because she wanted to, but because deep down she knew she had to. Now, here's where the paradox lies. This is often the moment people finally notice. When the energy you used to feel from her, soft, warm, curious, maybe even a little provocative, vanishes completely, there's no more echo of it. It's not a game, and it's not a tactic. She's simply moved on internally. And when someone reaches that point, when they no longer try to close the gap, it's one of the clearest indicators that something real has shifted. You might even feel that void more sharply than you expected. Not because she's making you feel it on purpose, but because absence, once it becomes complete, is often far more impactful than any argument or confrontation ever could be. We don't always realize how much someone's presence mattered until it becomes unspoken and unrecoverable. So what you're seeing at this stage is not a reaction, but a resolution. It's the end of the silent conversation her body had been having with you all along, and it carries weight. Because this kind of letting go doesn't look like the emotional outbursts we tend to associate with heartbreak or frustration. It looks like composure, like clarity, like a woman who has stopped waiting for a response that never came and has quietly chosen herself instead.